Welcome to the Coaching Gold Podcast. My name is Dr. Rudy Jackson. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Dorian Cunion. Today, we are blessed with a good friend and coach, Miss Marisa Thomas, and she's going to share all of her wisdom about coaching, and we're going to start with her providing an introduction of herself so that you know a little bit about her. Marisa, welcome.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Dorian, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Marisa Thomas. I'm an executive coach. I'm a strategic leadership focused individual. I like to help consult with entrepreneurs and executives to help them lead in their shoes, in their vision and in their values. And that is something that we can often miss doing. We can often get caught up in, what our culture, our society, our work culture requires of us, or the shoulds. And so I have a passion for really building people to bring their true, authentic leadership out. And so my overall purpose is to help leaders live their best life. There's a little bit about me. I'm also an author. I've authored The Power to Lead, How to Optimize Your Energy in Leadership. And I do believe that energy is the cornerstone for any great leader.
Well, that's great. That's great. And I appreciate you also sharing that you're an author, because many of our coaches come on and they just undersell how great and spectacular they are. So we're going to probably talk a little bit about your book a little later, but we want to start off like we always do and give our audience a little insight into what led you into becoming a coach.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it goes right back to childhood, right? And even though I didn't know it at the time, I found it difficult to learn how other people learn. And I was often looking around me, wondering why I couldn't pick up the dialogue, the learning in the same way. So it forced me to use different skill sets that weren't normal, that weren't the natural course of how we grow and our skill sets grow. It caused me to sit back and be more of an observer. It caused me to heighten my curiosity and ask lots of questions. It caused me to see between the lines when others were looking at the surface level. And so it became part of who I was, whatever I was doing, whatever hat that I was wearing, that I saw things in people, and it caused me to want to help them see so they could become even better than they already were. How can we improve? Because I was able to pull out the insights that they weren't seeing for themselves. And so it just naturally became a thing that I just enjoyed doing. And in my corporate career, started off in the training department. And when I stepped out of that space and started leading organizations, I always kept a good 20% of my time focused on helping other leaders be at their best. And that helped me be at my best, right? It helped me see things in a different way. And at some point, I just said, why aren't I doing this all the time? This is what fulfills me. This is what I am really getting a lot of fulfillment from, when I see others stepping into their true value, their true worth, and living their best life. If I can create that with a few people that are in my atmosphere, why aren't I doing it for more? And so that's what caused me to take this amazing career path into coaching.
That's great. That's great.
So, Marisa, one of the things I enjoy about you is that you are always the same person. Like when I first met you 2 years ago, that was the story that you shared. And I've just enjoyed watching you, build your coaching business and just kind of pass your positivity around to just multiple people. I'm super curious, how has becoming a coach changed the way you look at the world?
Oh, yeah, that's such a deep question, Dorian. And thank you for helping validate that I am my authentic self at all times. That sometimes works in my favor, it sometimes doesn't. But I feel fine. I feel fine with it. That normally comes across. But that question is a deep question because I think it comes to that word that I've used before, curiosity. It's helped me question the world a little bit. I recognize that what we see in our relationships, our work environment, or on social media or on TV is just surface level. And there's so much more that's below surface level that actually powers us in a greater way. And I only learned that through coaching. And through that coaching, it's allowed me to question things with deeper curiosity and be accepting of so many different perspectives that I didn't realize I needed to have. Yeah.
I love that because I know personally when I started getting into coaching, I just made assumptions. It's like if somebody used a word, I understood what that word meant, but we all use words differently. We all think differently. And I think I love what you said about being curious because as a coach, like you have to be curious. You're asking questions, you're helping people self-discover. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, Marisa, you've mentioned a couple times already helping your clients, helping your coworkers kind of lead from their shoes and lead from their values. And I think that's a part of the question I'm about to ask, which is kind of what impact do you strive to make through your coaching?
Yeah. I think it goes back to that answer that I shared previously, which is it's so much bigger than the transaction of coaching itself. It's about how you impact an individual so that the what they take away, it spreads and it compounds and it becomes something more than even they can imagine because they're paying it forward each time. And so, for me, it is about allowing leaders and entrepreneurs to live their best life. And best life can mean something different to every single individual. What balance means to me is different balance to somebody else. How you carve that up and what you make it up with is so individual and unique to the variables that exist in any one person's life. And we often don't recognize what those variables are, and we don't recognize where we fit within that. And when we can find it, and when we can find that purpose, and we understand where we fit and the impact that we want to make, that's when the magic happens. And so that's what drives me.
Okay, great.
So I know you were one of the first coaches to go through our Power Six Leader program, and part of that program is around helping people make better decisions. I'm curious, within your coaching, how do you help your clients become better decision makers?
Dorian, I love this topic. And the reason I love it so much is because it is so much more than the transaction of making a decision. And I think that's where most of us look at it. It's in the moment. We're faced with something and we react and we respond in that moment. But where clients can make their biggest impact to improve on their decision making comes in the preparation of two areas. One is the preparation of self, and the other is preparation of being able to respond and answer in that moment. So if I take the first thing, and I think this is the most important part of it, the preparation of self is it's huge, right? You know what it's like. You've been in these situations. You were in a corporate environment for a long time too, and you know that it is a treadmill. Your day starts and you're constantly going and you're going and you're going and you're moving from one thing to the next, that you make instinctive choices, you make instinctive decisions. You don't necessarily make data-driven decisions. You don't necessarily make mindful decisions because you're moving far too fast. And so the preparation of self comes into that sphere of what are you doing outside of the workplace, outside of your calendar and your to-do list that allows you the time to create space for yourself? What are those habits? And Dorian, you know, I talk about the doors methodology that I created decades ago. You know, for me, it's that starting point of when you can have habits in your daily life, in your weekly routines, then you have this gift that others don't have in other leadership positions. You have this ability to unapologetically tap into that power that you find in those moments when you're able to silence the noise and clear the space. So this ability to disconnect and find space is really important. And the most important thing to do is practice it when you're off the field, when you're out of the boardroom, when you're out of the meetings, when you're out of the family, you know, activities that you've got scheduled for the, whatever it may be, is taking those moments and being intentional to do that. In my book, there's an analogy, and actually, Dorian, your daughter did the illustration for this image in the book. But there's an image of a book, and we speak about having a full cup. You know, we hear people say, "Oh, you know, you just filled my cup," or "My cup is full." And I get a little bit anxious about that now. I used to say it all the time, but I do get a little anxious because it means when your cup is full, then when the unexpected things happen in your day, and as a leader you have to react to, you're now not choosing what spills over the cup. There's no space. There's no space. So a full cup should only ever mean 3/4 of a cup. So you've got a quarter of it where you have created space by the time that you spend. For me, it's meditation. For some, it's going on a walk. For some, it's running on the treadmill. Doesn't matter. Where you're not thinking about anything, you're just being, right? That creates space. You amplify that space, that quarter that's at the top of the cup, by also intentionally having habits to think, what am I doing today that isn't serving me? Or what do I do in my routine that's actually causing me energy drains? Okay, are they worth it? Is there a return on investment for the effort that I'm putting into those thought patterns, those activities? And if they're not, then you have to shed them. Let's offload them. Let's get rid of them. And so that's a part of the preparation. And so you're creating that space that stays there every day. But if you're not intentional about it, it just remains full. And what spills over is out of your control. And what spills over oftentimes is something that causes to make unintentional impacts to decisions, because it might feel like the right decision to make in that moment, but you haven't yet understood the dynamics that require you to consume the right data, to read the room. Often when we're making decisions as leaders, there is a sense of urgency that might be there, or there's a sense of concern, or maybe someone wants to just give all the details and they're just like, you know, I've got the answer. I just want to get it out there in front of you. And you kind of like go, you have to pull back and you have to, you know, look at all of it and you have to address that first. But if you're not mindful and you're not got that space, you're not going to do that. You're just going to launch into responding. So those are what I mean by that preparation of self. So let's shift then over to the preparation of in the moment. And I've alluded a little bit to this, is like being able to walk into the room or notice the dynamics in the space before you even respond. It's just taking that pause. If there's a heightened sense of, and I'll take an example of, if there's urgency and then anxiety in the room, we oftentimes ignore it, or we might match the pace. And as a leader, you actually want everybody else in the room to be mindful, right? And so take a breath, calmly sit down, think about where you sit. Are you sitting at the head of the table so everybody's looking at you for an answer? Or are you sitting in the middle? Are you standing when everybody's sitting, or are you going to sit down, right? And really what you want to do is create an environment where all voices feel like they're invited into this conversation and that it's important. And that's important for you too. as a leader because you want to be able to get all perspectives before you make a decision. And the reason that I think this is powerful, and I work with this with my clients, is we often feel, because of the nature of our role, the nature of authority, that, unfortunately, we have titles like managers or directors. So they're expecting you to manage the situation. They're expecting you to direct to the answer. And oftentimes that's not where it should be. And oftentimes when you do that, you notice that people agree and walk away, but the execution might not land. And you know why? Because they don't feel part of the solution. They don't feel like they were heard. They don't understand the context behind the decision that you made. And so there's confusion, and there's 15 different interpretations of the decision that you just made. And so when you intentionally approach the conversation by reading the room, addressing what's happening in the room, positioning yourself so that it feels safe for people to put their opinions forward, then you are able to hear, see, feel all the different options that may be available to you. And it helps in dialogue for you to be able to address all points of view. It's also important not to diminish any point of view. There might be something that internally you're thinking, I don't know how that's going to work. But the worst thing that you could do is say, especially if don't put your hand up, body language matters. Yeah, I know. I don't think that that's going to work right now. I've done it. I'm guilty. Done it. Right? You want to shut something down because you can see it going in a direction that you don't agree with. But really, it's like, hey, that's an interesting perspective. I'd like to understand more about that. But let's first just have some more. I think there are some voices in the room that we haven't invited. Actually, do we have the right people in the room? Are we the right people to inform on the data? Are we missing some data? I don't want to rush to an important decision if you don't have the right data points to validate that you're making the right decision. Sometimes you don't make a decision right there and then. Sometimes there's a takeaway and there's a follow-up. And just because people are looking for you to kind of make that decision, if you don't feel right and you don't feel like that you have all that you need to move forward on that decision, then it's on you as the leader to say, okay, I've heard all, perspectives. Here's what I'm thinking and why. And here's where I think we're missing some data. It's an important decision. So I think we need to have all hands on deck to determine how we get the right voices involved and we get to the data. And then ask the question so people, stand up, take accountability. Okay, that's something that I can take away. That's something that I'll get back. When can you bring that back in? Right, let's meet in the next hour and let's see if we can address it from there with the answers to those questions. If it's going to take longer, let me know, right? And give that as an option.
Marisa, you've unpacked so much that what I'm noticing is that as we would be coaching or training others, the modeling that has gone on in a person's professional career or personal life, they probably picked up some habits that aren't working for them. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if there is some kind of initial or starting mindset that is helpful for a person to help them be ready to go into learning about all the things that are going to be impacting them to become a better decision maker. Have you crystallized that down to a mindset that helps people get in the right mental space to make better decisions?
Yeah. Rudy, I think this comes from the most valuable tool of a coach, and that's in asking really open questions, right? So questions like, what have you noticed from leaders that you've respected the most in how they've made decisions? So we shouldn't explain. We should never explain to somebody how, to make that decision. It's much more powerful when they can come to conclusions from their own observations, from their own experiences, and that comes through the questions. So talk to me about that situation where you felt like you walked away making the wrong decision. What did you notice about what happened in that moment, right? What were your emotions thinking? What is it about the circumstance that took you you knew it was the wrong decision. You knew it was the wrong thing in that moment, but you said you felt pressured. Where was that pressure coming from? And what tends to show up is it could be something, a lot of the time it's something from childhood, right? A lot of the time it is something that's like, you know what, when I was growing up, my mom always used to say to me, or my dad always used to say to me, and it's a habit that it's like, you know, if you're going to lead people, you should know the answers. I always hear this as well, you know, well, if I've got somebody who's underperforming, you hear the comments of, so I decided that I'm going to do this, you know, I'm going to do it for them. I'll write the deck for them. I'll show them. It's important for me to know that I can do the job if I'm going to lead somebody else to do the job. Well, the reality is you will burn out. You are not leading. You are managing the work. You're not managing the people that do the work, right? And so it comes through bringing those scenarios to the surface that helps them tune into, I do this because. I do this because as a leader, you should. That's what I hear. The words come out as should. As a leader, you should. Or my team expects me to. And they tend to be things that are grounded in habits that they see from other people, and they think they're the right things to do. Now, how's that working for you? Right? And it's like, not very well. Okay. Talk to me more about that. And so it's through those open questions, and it's about surfacing the shoulds, the expectations that drive them in a certain direction, but don't actually serve the purpose of making the right decisions in those moments.
So you mentioned the shoulds, which get in the way of people. And then you also mentioned that it's habits. It's like, this is the way I've always done things. And I'm sure you work with clients and it's like the way they've always done things is getting in the way of them actually achieving their goals. You know, what's one thing that you feel like somebody could do like this week if they're trying to make a change and just be more effective in their decision making?
I would practice off the field. I would practice your moments of mindfulness so that when you're in the room making a decision, you can make more mindful decisions. So practice off the field. Just do that. Create a habit. One habit.
I love that. And it aligns really well with, you know, your book and just the importance of having some routines that you have in place for being aware of yourself and then being able to self-regulate yourself, because it's really easy to get hijacked where your emotions just take over and you're not doing like the best long-term thinking. And I think it's important that we almost watch ourselves like we're our own booby trap, that like we need to be aware that, you know, most times when we aren't hitting our goals, it's because of something in our own habits or behaviors that's getting in our way.
Yeah. Dorian, can I add another one? Because I'm a rule breaker, so I can't just do one. I need another one. The second thing that I think you can do is check your ego at the door, right? I think that's a big one. I think that a lot of the time that we make a wrong decision is because we're driven by ego. We want to be the ones to show that we've made the decision. And when everybody's praising the outcome, it feels good, right? It just feels good to be recognized in that way. And every, you know, great leader doesn't care about whether the recognition goes back to them. In fact, they care more about the people that are making the decisions on their behalf, because that's what makes a resilient organization, where it just doesn't land on one person. It is the skill set that anybody in that organization that has a leadership role can stand on those same principles, those same those same values in a way that allows anybody to feel like they've collectively made the right decision.
I'm really glad you added that, because I think those things not necessarily balance each other, but they really complement each other. And I don't think we spend enough time talking about that piece because it's kind of frowned upon. So I know that it matters, and we need to give it more time. But I think Dorian and I would love to just continue to talk to you about decision making for the entire hour. But, we have this special part of the show where we actually provide the opportunity for our guests to ask us a question just to model a little bit. And so we have a little back and forth. So we want to throw this out to you. What kind of question would you give us today that we can chew on and discuss?
In your experience, what are the best practices for making better decisions?
I'll kick it off with, I think values are just super important. If you're a leader within an organization, you need to know what your values are. You need to know what the organization's values are. And then you need to help your team understand, what are your expectations around decision making. Frequently, bad behaviors come out of bosses because they see that their employees are making decisions that they're not comfortable with. And I think many times that comes from the leader not taking the time to say, hey, this is a customer focused organization. As long as you're making a decision based off the customer, I'm going to support you 100%. So that would be my suggestion to any leader that's trying to improve decision making on their team. Really take the time to understand what are their values and what's important to them, and then consistently communicate that to their team and challenge their team to hold them accountable if they see that they're not leading their values. Because frequently, we all kind of get led astray, get distracted, and it's just helpful to have people around you to say, hey, you said this, you said that was important to you. I don't feel like you're living it right now. And being humble enough to say, you're absolutely right. I appreciate you bringing it to my attention, and I want to do better.
I love that, Dorian. I think the other side of that is that you've now created trust. When you live what you say, it amplifies trust. They now trust your decision, so they're going to take that decision and they're going to, move it forward as though it was their own. Yeah. So standing in your values, I think is fantastic. Great best practice. What about you, Rudy?
So I would actually go back to our Power Six framework and focus in on decision making as a process and not an outcome, which you alluded to earlier. And we make that a cornerstone of what we do. And I do think it's a mental shift because we are incentivized and pressured to get to the outcome and make the decision so that things can, quote unquote, move forward. But what I've found is that when managers and leaders can really model the process, it opens the door for everyone on the team to feel a part of the process, to feel like their voice is heard and valued. And our goal is not to make or to get to the outcome, but we want to get the best outcome. So as you know, if everybody's not valued, they're not going to contribute because they don't feel like they have something that the team values. So we just noted that there are potentially two bad outcomes, that people won't contribute, and so we won't get to the best outcome. But then secondly, that even if we get to the best outcome, if we don't have a process that actually reinforces that everyone's value and voice is heard, that they won't be bought in to execute. And so that's like the double lose on that, where you don't get the best outcome and you don't get everybody bought in. And so that's why we feel like process is really, really important. And I think many times overlooked because of the pressures to get to a decision.
Can I ask another question?
Well, you're a rule breaker, so sure.
What do you think is one of the leading factors why we might not make the best decision?
I think it can be ego driven in that we feel like we have the best answer. And if we're not open to others having an answer that would supplement our answer or decision or be better than our decision, if we're not open to that because of our position or promotions or praise or what we may feel like is a responsibility, then if we're not open to it, we're not going to listen to it. And so listen for it. So I think the ego, as you mentioned earlier, is a part of that. Dorian, you want to piggyback on that?
I'm reading a book right now, and it's Marcus Aurelius, Socrates, and one other philosopher. And it's pretty amazing to me to read something that's so old and that the problems that they're talking about are like the same problems that we all deal with.
Yeah.
And, with the ego, it is these aspirations around wealth. It's like, I need to make a lot of money, or I want a whole lot of prestige, and, fear of how are the others going to view me if I'm not presenting myself in this way. So going back to what Marissa said in the beginning, I love the thought of really being grounded in who you are, like defining what's important and just being comfortable, because whenever it is like an outside force that's making you feel like you got to move faster or show up in a way different than your authentic self, I think there's the risk of bad decision making. But I think as long as you can stay grounded in who you are and your values, and really be comfortable with allowing enough space to be curious and find the right decision, that even, and this gets into, Dr. Rudy's last part of the Power Six, even if you make a bad decision, it's a good opportunity to learn and be able to make a better decision in the future. So just being willing to, I'm going to try to do the best that I can in this moment. And if I make a mistake, I'm going to learn from it and continue to grow. I think that's just a huge part of evolving as a leader.
I bet.
So, at this point, we asked this question to everybody, and it's really like the bookends of the conversation. We've talked about why you became a coach. We've talked about decision making. We want to kind of understand, for somebody that's thinking about working with a coach, or particularly thinking about working with you, what do your clients tend to get right at the beginning of the coaching process?
I think the first thing is choosing to have a coach, right? And that for me is huge. A lot of the time I can work with people who are placed in a coaching relationship, and it takes the first session to help them choose to be in that conversation. So I would say the first thing is about, don't they get it right by not just showing up, but choosing to really lean into the coaching engagement. The second thing I would say is their acknowledgement that they hold the answers, right? And again, that can take a bit of a process, normally through that first session or the next. But, a lot of people choose a coach because of their background, which is valid and which is useful. And there's some resonance to that. But you shouldn't expect that coach is going to give you the answers, because your situation is wrapped in very different circumstances and variables, and their solution may not work for that particular situation. What your coach is going to help you do, and what I help my clients do, is really find the solution that is already within them, and encourage and provide them with the platform to explore and see what works. And normally from there, they come back with, a few aha moments, and then other things that they didn't, realize that they were going to do. And that's where that the magic has happened. So those two things, choosing and then, owning.
I appreciate the distinction that you make there, because you and I both do training, and like we can go into a business and say, hey, here's the blueprint, here's exactly what to do. But there's training and coaching are two different things. And I think that individual that's looking for a coach, they know that they have the potential. They know they've had some success in the past, but something's getting in the way. And that coaching really helps, kind of strip away all those things that are slowing you down and getting in the way, and really allowing you to connect into your inner strength.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the people that I work with are, they're director and above. They're highly ambitious, but at some point feeling they could be the owner, the CEO of the organization, but a feeling like they've kind of got stuck, or they've hit their cap, or something's not gelling. The culture of their organization has shifted, and they're not quite sure how or what, and it's normally because growth, or the the external factors, macroeconomic factors, all of those things can shift a dynamic of an organization and the talent that you attract into an organization. And we often lose sight of those things. So there tends to be a feeling of, I'm not fulfilled at this point, or I don't think I'm doing or making the impact that I should be making. And so they're the people that I tend to work with, and to really unleash that. And there's, in my mission, I put out there that there's three things that we do, right? We transform the thinking so that we can evolve the person who can then arrive time and time again through that process at different destinations of leadership excellence.
I think that's the perfect way to end the podcast. What I do want to do before we leave is to make sure that the audience members can contact you and connect with you. And so tell us a little bit about the best ways to connect with you for someone who may be looking for coaching support.
I would say the easiest way is to go onto my website, which is doorseffect.com. That is DOORESEFFECT, doorseffect.com. Or you can email me directly, Marisa Thomas at doorseffect.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. So there's lots of different avenues to reach me out.
We love LinkedIn. Dorian and I are both on LinkedIn. Dorian, would you like to give your other contact information too before we go?
Yeah, no, if somebody's interested in learning more about my coaching practice, you can go to www.yourpathexecutivesolutions.com. Have tons of resources on there around coaching, and would love to have a conversation if somebody's looking to get some support either with their small business or with growing their career.
That's great. Well, Marisa, we just want to thank you again. We really admire the work that you're doing. The work that you're doing really connects with what we're doing with the Power Six, and you're a part of our Power Six community. And so we just wish you the best of luck and success, and maybe we can have you back on again to discuss another topic. Dorian, any final words?
No, just appreciate everybody tuning in and continue to join us each week. We have a bunch of different coaches that we're profiling, and it's just a very nice opportunity to learn more about coaching, learn more about specific topics, and then be able to figure out which type of coach would be best for you.
Great. Well, we will end the show here. Thank you so much, Marisa and Dorian. Have a great day.
Thank you.